Does a 90-day step-by-step plan that can calm your nervous system, sharpen your memory, and reduce concussion symptoms sound good to be true? Let's find out. I'm Kyle Como, legal nurse consultant here at Shane Smith Law, and you're listening to Mind Matters, where we connect the dots between brain science, real-world recovery, and the legal world of traumatic brain injury. We're back today with Dr. Brody Miller, PhD, a brain rehabilitation and neuroplasticity specialist who helps high-achieving professionals, athletes, and concussion survivors eliminate brain fog, memory loss, and lingering symptoms without all the pills and surgery. He's a best-selling author with a PhD in traumatic brain injury research, and his work grows out of both rigorous science and his own recovery from severe brain injury, seizures, and brain surgery, all centered on one core truth: the brain can heal. Today, we're going to break down his Rebound Method and his 90-day brain rescue framework and explore these tools that can look into everyday life after TBI. Dr. Brody, it is good to have you back with us today.
Awesome to be here, Kylie.
Yeah. Excellent. Let's dig in. In your work, you talk a lot about, this natural approach to brain rehab that uses the brain's ability to heal itself, right? So at a high level, can you kind of break down what your approach is, how it's different from that traditional kind of purely medical model of TBI care?
The Rebound Method was created because of my own journey and my own experiences and all that I learned, basically synthesized into a way to help others do the same. And it's all based upon the principles of how the brain can change itself, can adapt and heal. And this method is a 7-step process because brain healing is not only physical, it's emotional, it's mental, and it's also even spiritual. And each step is created to guide you from the physical aspects to the mental, emotional, and spiritual aspects of recovery. A lot of doctors get this wrong, in my personal opinion. My humble opinion is they want to heal the brain in a physical way, the supplementation, the nutrition, and all of that's great. Don't get me wrong, like hydration and sleep. If you're not dealing with the root issues of mental and emotional and even spiritual aspects of recovery, it's going to be a long journey and longer and harder than it needs to be.
Absolutely. I mean, that's where all those things reside. Your spiritual self, your emotional, those all reside deep within that complicated organ we call the brain. So, I really love that you're touching on this aspect of brain recovery. You created this 7-step Rebound Method. I think you term it the Mind Gym, right? This program for concussion and brain injury recovery. Can you kind of walk us through what Rebound stands for and maybe what each step is aiming to do in the brain?
Yes, absolutely. So the first step in the process is called refocus. It's not about that we lose our focus. It's about refocusing on what we do want versus what we don't. And so if you think of recovery like a mountain that we're climbing up Mount Everest, in a way that it's important to refocus on the peak instead of where you used to be or what kind of dangers are heading your way right now, and take it one step at a time. And so this first step is all about the foundations of getting the physical aspect of your brain better through rest, supplementation, nutrition, etc. The next step is E for engage. So it's talking about engaging new neural pathways. And so once you have that foundation, then it's starting to build and rewire the brain to go into different stages. Next is B for brain, which I call the 5 principles of neuroplasticity, which are breathing, repetition, association, intensity, and novelty. And those 5 principles will lead to miraculous changes in the brain over time. The next step is the O in Rebound, which is all about optimization. And so we want to optimize the brain now that we've got it back on track. And so that's kind of where the Mind Gym exercises and things to get processing speed back on track. The U is for unconscious, which means our unconscious mind. So now that we've established this baseline, then it's about getting the unconscious, subconscious mind, dialing that in, the mental and emotional aspects of recovery. And amazing things can happen when you change the roots. The N is for nexus, which is the spiritual aspects, which means connection, that we're connected with everyone and everything. And finally, and last but not least, is D for dedicate, which is dedicating to a long-term recovery, because science proves that it takes 60 to 254 days to create a new neurological habit in the brain. And so recovery takes time. And even after those 250 days, you want to dedicate to a long-term recovery, because long-term changes, it can create miracles.
Amen to that. Well stated. I wrote those down, dig into those a little bit offline. I know when we're all through talking, but your 90-day brain rescue is a little different, right? It's kind of focused more on reclaiming memory and function, right? After a brain injury. What does, a typical day, or we'll say a week, look like for someone following that plan? What kinds of practices or habits are we talking about?
Yeah, another great question. And so it's structured at 90 days, because 90 days is often the sweet spot to create a new habit in the brain, a new physical change in the brain. And what a typical day in the life would look like for somebody is they'll do some breathing exercises to get blood and oxygen into the brain. They'll be doing targeted, specific brain health exercises, kind of like bicep curls for the brain. You want to target different brain regions and areas. They'll be doing some meditating, but also I like to do hypnotherapy and things like that with people to influence their subconscious mind and give them positive suggestions. And so it's not overwhelming. If you're a high level athlete, it may be different than just somebody who's just trying to get their function back. But we'll also do a lot of memory exercises, and it's just steady progress is the goal over that time.
Slow and steady is the goal. That's right. I'd love to pose the questions to our audience. So far, after hearing about, the Rebound Method, the 90-day program we're talking about here, if you have a brain injury, or maybe, again, you love somebody with a brain injury, you're walking along trying to help with that, what's one symptoms you love to see improve over that 90 days? Maybe you're struggling with memory, fatigue, maybe it's overstimulation. Share your comments below, please, and help somebody in the listener audience to get a little insight and hope, possibly. Dr. Brody, you emphasize things like mindfulness, meditation, breathing, nervous system regulation. We talked about nutrition. Really that habit-based brain training and activation for someone who's just overwhelmed. It's a lot of information, and it's a deep and serious injury they have. Where do you usually start so it feels doable?
Absolutely. The point with brain injury and concussion, it's important to understand that there's a push and pull. There's a push and pull between progress and setbacks. And so it's very important to find what is our line in the sand. What is our imaginary line in the sand that changes every single day, that is our stress threshold, that is too much for us versus too little? And what I see all the time is there's a group of people that want to push through everything and go way over that imaginary line, and it gets them back to relapse and issues, with symptoms flaring up again. But there's also another group that I see that is scared to even get close to the line. Why that's a problem is because our brain needs to adapt. And if we're not pushing it and moving a little bit out of our comfort zone, we'll kind of always be stuck in that kind of rough stage.
That's so tough for, here at Shane Smith Law, we have a lot of clients who obviously have been injured, various methods, physical injuries. We're talking, vertebral fractures or a fractured femur or something like that, right? Those are serious injuries. You can see those healing. They're a little more measurable, but they take a long time. The brain, it's no different. I think some of our clients tend to get frustrated with what they perceive as that slow progress they seem to be making, or lack of progress. So I really, again, appreciate how you don't sugarcoat it, and you really lay out that, this is going to take time. There's going to be progress and there's going to be setback, and that's normal. So I would love to ask our audience, again, survivors, caregivers, maybe you're an attorney or provider who has a case with somebody. Have they tried any practices like meditation, structured routines that help with brain injury symptoms. Did anything help or maybe it didn't? Share those thoughts in the comments below, please. Dr. Brody, a lot of our listeners, are years out from their injury. This is a long time ago, but they worry it's too late maybe to see any change. They feel like maybe they're stuck where they are. But hearing you maybe gives a little glimmer of hope. Based on your work and your research, what have you seen in terms of progress for people who may be long past that acute phase of their TBI?
Yeah, and I don't want to sugarcoat it because people that have been struggling with this stuff for years, I feel for you deeply. It is tough to go, sometimes year after year and still not feeling like how you used to be. But I want to challenge that with this is, although the brain may have wired itself to feel like to have these symptoms and that become your new normal, it is always possible to carve new pathways despite that and even get your brain back on track. It may take a little more intention. It may take a little more focus. But if we can make small, tiny steps of progress, you're going to build momentum, even if it's been years out, by restructuring. And it's like the brain is like a forest. And so all of this stuff that have accumulated over years, it's really tough. But if we can carve a new pathway in the forest, as difficult as that may seem right now, it is possible to make tiny steps, pinky moves, and baby steps in the right direction, and it will add up over time.
That's right. That over time is so key. You're right. Dr. Brody, from working inside of a law firm, being a clinical person myself, from that legal and clinical and documentation standpoint, because that's so key in what we do out here, right? What kind of changes do your own clients, often report? Things, again, we're talking things like reduced symptom frequency, better tolerance, just improvement, documented improvement that might be able to help paint that clear picture of functional improvement, or ongoing limitations.
I'll talk about a few individuals. I'll keep their names for disclosure, but let's just say there's a client I worked with, let's just call her Jan. And Jan was a comedian that was struggling with panic attacks and anxieties from a chemical brain injury that she suffered from taking too much medication. And there was some malpractice that went on in surgery. And she was a high achieving lady. I mean, who has so brave that she was willing to get on stage, but deep down, she was struggling with panic attacks. So I taught her some natural healing methods like meditation and breathing and hypnosis. And now she's able to turn off that panic attack when it comes up almost immediately. She flipped that switch. Another one was who I will say his name was Anthony Joshua. A lot of people know he fought Jake Paul and knocked Jake Paul out on Netflix. But Anthony, such a humble human being, but he came to me with the fear of neurodegeneration, which is understandable because people like Muhammad Ali and other boxers with those repetitive head injuries. But Anthony, we were able to get him back on track, and he secured $92 million on Netflix. And his performance levels and memory increased with our work together. And it just goes to tell you, it doesn't matter whether you're like Anthony, you're elite, high-level performance individual, or you're just somebody who wants to get their life back on track. It's all possible through the brain.
We've had other providers, clinical or rehabilitative, whatever, such as yourself on. You're able to document those things. You use battery of tests and assessments and all these tools that take what we see as kind of anecdotal sometimes, but it puts it on paper. Data is gold. So those sorts of success stories are so key. And I appreciate that last one because I know exactly what you're talking about. That's amazing. I'd like to kind of take that thought and pose to our audience, especially for clinicians or legal professionals out there, what kind of structured, measurable change, we're talking about, work hours or screen tolerance, even driving ability, do you find most helpful in understanding and then being able to communicate the real impact of TBI? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Dr. Brody, not everybody is going to work directly with you, right? So what are one or two concrete practices, from your rebound framework or maybe your 90-day, plan that a listener could try safely and start exploring, with their care team's blessing?
Yeah, let me give one to you real quick because it's very hands-on. So understand that even movements of the hand is stimulating our brain in the motor cortex of our brain. So one simple one is you can just clasp your hands together and then put out your pinky thumb and put out your right thumb, pinky finger and right thumb, excuse me. And then you're just going to switch those.
Switch them?
Switch them. And then you're going to switch them again.
Oh, man.
See, you got it. See, there's activity that's generated, or you could even just do 1 and 2.
Okay.
1, 2, 1, 2, right? And then you're going to switch to, so like we can start as basic as that. And that in itself is going to improve oxygenation and blood flow to specific brain area regions. And that's where the progress is.
That's amazing. That is very easy, very practical. So thank you for that. That's amazing.
Pleasure.
Yeah. So I know we're kind of getting close on time. Unfortunately, this has been an amazing conversation. I really would like for you, kind of as we're leaving, to speak to survivors, families, or even professionals who want to go deeper, learn about your program, your book, your methods, your story, possibly even consult with you. What's the best way to connect and figure out if your approach is a good fit?
If you're an action taker and you have an open mind, then we're going to be a great fit together. If you're really driven, but you just need a little extra assistance in getting things back on track, you can find me at drbrodymiller.com, BRODYMILLER.com, where you can work with me one-on-one. But my friend Kevin Ballister and colleague from How to Feed a Brain are creating an online community for brain recovery survivors that want to get the process and use the Rebound Method to get back on track. Right now, we're offering a 14-day free trial to our community with the online support, the education, et cetera, et cetera. So if you don't want to work with me one-on-one direct and you want something that's a little more affordable, we also offer that at dr-bro.com/14-day free trial. And I'll put that, I'll give that to you so that you can click on the link.
Absolutely. Amazing. Dr. Brody, thank you so much. What a great conversation, audience. I hate that we have to wrap this episode of Mind Matters. I want to give a huge thank you to Dr. Brody Miller, for taking us inside, his brain rescue approach, the Rebound Method, showing us how neuroplasticity-based rehabilitation, aimed at reducing, again, symptoms. We're talking about brain fog, improving memory, quieting those lingering systems, without solely relying on all the pills, the surgeries, all of that. His blend of, lived experience and that PhD level research really bring that core belief to life, right? Again, the brain can heal, audience. It truly can. If today's conversation sparked ideas about your own recovery or about how to better support clients or patients, we would love to hear from you in the comments. Your questions, your stories, they really help us to bridge the gap between medicine, therapy, the legal side of traumatic brain injury. Please subscribe to our channel, give this episode a like, and then share it with somebody who could benefit from this new way of thinking about brain healing. Maybe get inspired a little bit. And as always, remember, if you're in pain, call Shane at 980-999-9999. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on another episode of Mind Matters. Take care.
In pain, so I call Shane. 980-999-9999. In pain, call Shane.